baby. Come on, Russian, get out. It's time to go. Yeah. Look at this. Look how he's doing. Look how he's playing. Look how ugly this is.
From yelling at dealers, to threatening co-players, to storming out of the room, Tony G has given us some of the most entertaining outbursts in the world of poker. The Australian-born, also known as Antanas Guoga, is the loudest mouth and the most unpredictable nightmare on the table.
You come to my game and you're wasting my time.
On the internet, people
On your
don't bet.
bike.
For years, his rants have been as famous as his mission to make Phil Hellmuth's life miserable. Because every time Tony loses his cool, he somehow makes poker more famous. So, without further delay, here's a number of times when Tony rages, but it gets increasingly out of control. Okay, so let's start off easy with a moment that is not too bad. Tony G was sitting at the table that night to play solid poker. The starting hand looked good at first. Tony called a bet with pocket sixes, thinking his opponent had already gone all in. So, as confident as ever, he flipped his cards face up. His opponent just stared, probably thinking, did he really just show me his hand?
Cool. I'm sorry, I'm cool. That's sick.
Tony's got like 100,000 here. He just calls, flips his hand over.
And yes, he did. Because that little slip-up changed everything. There is a rule in poker that says never to expose your cards before the hand ends or all players are all in. And once that happens, the floor gets called and they tell you that you can't bet anymore.
Raise. It's up to him now, right? You're going to see the flop. You cannot raise, you can only call.
Okay. You can only call. That's what happened to Tony, because now his opponent knew exactly what he was holding. You could see Tony trying to keep it together. He laughed a little, pretending it's no big deal. But deep down, you could see he was falling apart inside. His hand was completely stripped of power, while his opponent got to play with X-ray vision.
That he knows he made the mistake.
And then came the turn card, a 6. Most people would start celebrating inside, but Tony just stared at it almost disappointedly because, honestly, this was the perfect card at the worst possible time. You could see his jaw tightening as he gave that half smile people like wearing when they are trying not to lose it. He looked like a man who wanted to punch a pillow but had to keep pretending everything's fine. Imagine playing hard all along and finally getting the dream card, only to realize the dream was dead on arrival. The whole table felt that tension too. Some players fought hard to hold their laughter, while others just shook their heads. Seriously, if poker had a background music, this moment would have had a sad violin. Tony's rage level during this game could be described as a contained explosion. You could see it boiling underneath his smile. And trust me, you'll want to stick around. Things get wilder from here. It was an episode of The Big Game, one of those high-stakes poker shows. Sitting at the table were two of poker's most dramatic personalities, Tony G, the loud guy who loves troubles, and Phil Hellmuth, the serious poker brat who hates being made fun of. Can you imagine the tension? How would you feel sitting at a table with these two guys playing? Let me know below. Before the cards were even fully dealt, Tony was already doing his thing.
Tony,
I'm all in.
pot limit, brah.
Without looking?
Without looking.
Pretty sure.
He bent backwards, looked around the table, and announced, "I'm all in," without looking. Or so he said. Everyone seemed to stop for a second and take that in. The dealer held on, and Phil gave him this look like,
It's hard to believe that you always have a hand against me.
"Oh really? You expect me to believe that?" Tony then grinned in a wicked way, proving he was already enjoying how much he was annoying everyone. As the game went on, Phil glanced at his hand, trying to stay calm. Tony, on the other hand, was behaving like someone on vacation, crossing his arms and smiling wide.
Did you look at your cards at all? I mean, it's...
Look, the people at home, no, I haven't looked. Joe's looked at my
if
hand.
you haven't looked...
Phil asked to confirm if he's really not going to look at his cards at all, and he responds that he wasn't going to look. Maybe Phil was having a hard time believing him, or maybe not. But one thing was for sure, Tony G had looked.
Well, if you haven't looked, I guess I'll just move in.
Phil ships and Tony calls.
A little time went by, and Phil finally said what was on his mind ever since. "If you haven't looked, then I guess I'll just move in," before pushing his entire stack in the middle. He flipped his ace-jack over, expecting to be ahead of Tony. Tony uttered the words, "You're close," with a horrible smile on his face while turning over ace-king. At this point, it was clear Tony had looked at his card. Phil, in disbelief, asked, "You lied?" with a silly grin on his face. Tony tilted his head, paused for a second, and then blurted out, "Of course I lied. It's poker, Phil. What do you think this is?"
All right, you're close. You're up there.
Oh, you lied.
Of course I lied. It's poker, Phil. What do you think this is?
At that point, the others burst out laughing. Even the dealer almost gave in, but one guy didn't find it funny at all. Phil. Phil was clearly embarrassed because, in poker, being played is one thing, but being tricked is a whole new level of humiliation. To make matters worse, Tony just sat there enjoying the shipwreck he'd caused. He wasn't really celebrating, but he was talking and smiling and acting all gentle, like a cat that had just knocked something off a shelf and was now pretending it didn't happen. Phil still couldn't keep it in, so he asked, "Why would you lie? I mean, it's totally uncool."
Why would you lie? I mean, no, let's consider totally not uncool, man. I mean, it's not right.
I feel it's just a game.
That's etiquette, though. I mean,
The thing is, Tony felt it was just a game. After all, it was really only a game, but Phil couldn't see it that way at all. This was more than an ordinary game to him. How would you react if you were the one it happened to? Hit like to knock over the whole table in a fit of rage, or subscribe to maintain your composure. If I were you, I would choose one now. Seriously, Tony G's lie came like a slap on Phil Hellmuth's face. Despite other players waving it aside, Phil took it as a twisted insult disguised as compliment. And that's Tony's secret power. You can't mess around with a guy like that. That tension is what he lives for. He wants to see what happens when people are pushed beyond their elastic limit. And he would rage to see it happen. At one point, he led Phil off the table and told him, "I think you should retire."
I'm sorry. I think you should retire. I think it's over. I think you're not there anymore, Phil.
I think it's over. He just can't help himself when it comes to needling Phil. But this was still playful, minor rage Tony. This was barely a warm-up. Wait till you see what's coming later. The next moment is a moment Tony actually went seriously off at his opponent.
Up and away, come on. On your bike. On your bike.
The moment that made this line famous happened years ago, in a televised match against Russian player Ralph Perry. The hand started out normally.
Learn from.
Ralph Perry needs a king or a jack.
Seven on the turn.
Pair the board, baby.
Ralph
Teach
Perry
him a good lesson here.
is down in the river. Needs a king or a jack.
With Perry making a move that Tony clearly didn't like. Perry was down in the river, needing a king or a jack. And because he couldn't get any, the cards ran out and Tony won the pot. The dealer then pushed the mountain of chips toward him, but instead of celebrating his win, Tony stood up and all hell broke loose.
Yeah! Yeah, baby! Come on, Russian, get out. It's time to go. Yeah! Look at this. Look how he's doing. Look how he's playing. Look how ugly this is. You're a professional player and I can do this to you. You're a terrible player. This is disgraceful. Bring the Russians on. Bring more Russians on.
He screamed twice and said, "Come on, Russian, get out. It's time to go." Then he launched into a long speech of how terrible and disgraceful Perry was playing. Tony then mocked him, saying, "This is how you play? You called with a king jack? What school have you been to?"
Look how he's doing. Look how he's playing. Look how ugly this is. You play that as bad as you can. Your career is finished. You are gone. 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 I got you covered. Is this how you play? You call with king jack? Which school have you been to?
How close is those?
Ralph
What is
Perry
this?
looks like
Perry barely reacted. He was calm all through and probably very embarrassed, while Tony was pacing, laughing, and waving his arms around. He was not even angry at the hand itself. He was angry at the logic behind it, because in his mind, bad poker deserves punishment, and he's more than happy to deliver it himself. With how he was raging, the commentators themselves said he looked like he could single-handedly reignite the Cold War.
Tony G could single-handedly reignite the Cold War.
And that couldn't be far from the truth. But just when it seemed he wouldn't go on, Tony said to Perry, "On your bike! On your bike!" Then without hesitation,
Up and away, come on. On your bike. On your bike.
Despite the assault, Ralph Perry taking the high road.
He's in shock.
the Russian stood up quietly and hit the road, just as he was told.
Now, he doesn't deserve any applause. He called with king jack. If you read my poker strategy, I tell everyone, never overplay king jack.
Tony then added he doesn't deserve an applause from the audience for calling with king jack. I'd even tell you to get on your bike too. Unless you, of course, subscribe first.
Yeah, boy.
Anyways, what makes this outburst rather funny is the fact Tony wasn't raging from a loss. He was raging from winning. You might say he had high standards, but make no mistake, the guy believed there was a right way to play, and if you didn't follow it, you deserved to be there. But behind the laughter and the hand waving, look very closely and you will see Tony's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. You can even hear his voice shaking a bit, like he's trying to keep his temper under control. He wanted to look like he was joking, but deep down, he hated being challenged, especially by someone he thought should know better. Seriously, the rage level at this point is a boiling irritation dressed as playfulness. Enjoy it while it lasts, because next time, the laughs won't come so easy. This is the one I like to call the straddle incident. The day someone gave Tony G the silent treatment. And if you've ever seen Tony play, you know silence drives him crazy. It happened on a televised party poker big game cash table. This was a casual, friendly table, or at least that's what it was supposed to be. Everyone there was in good spirits, laughing, joking, and throwing chips around until something unbelievable hit them. Now, in games like this, players usually have sort of an unwritten rule. Everyone straddles. For non-poker folks, a straddle is when a player voluntarily posts a blind bet before the cards are even handed out. It's like basically saying, let's make it more fun and expensive. Games like this create action in big pots, which is exactly Tony's idea of heaven. Let's just say every other guy he's played with has been great until he met Toby Lewis that day. Tony and Toby, what a nice wordplay. You'd wish their bond was as cute as their names. Toby was polite and young, the complete opposite of Tony. He had just joined the table, and when the straddle came around to him, he didn't do it.
I mean, come on, you're representing a brand that's all about gambling and giving people a chance. What is this? What sort of people are you bringing here?
He just sat there, folded his arms, and passed. And you could almost hear Tony's blood pressure rising through the screen.
You should walk out, get up the chips, and go. It's a disgrace.
Toby then smiled a little and shrugged. He didn't give any other reaction than that. And that calm, that British type of silence is what breaks Tony. Soon, he started talking faster, louder, almost pleading, but also mocking, calling Toby a professional nit for killing the action.
He missed the straddle, and then he tried to pretend like he didn't do it. Like, yeah, I'll do it sometimes, he said. I mean, where are these jerks from? What sort of nits are you producing? What are you doing? What's going on? There's no scammers here.
As the silence drew on, the dealer looked really uncomfortable. It was the kind of awkward tension where you're not sure if it's still a joke or if things are about to explode. Then Tony started throwing out little jabs. But Toby still said nothing.
Toby taking it quite well.
He is.
Handled himself well.
Saving €100 for the bus fare home. That's what he's trying to do, right?
I can't say that I would have handled it the same way.
He's a snowball.
Right, Jokel? You don't do that.
900.
You say, I don't want to do it, and that's fine, right? But when you do it, you pretend it's going on, and then you want to be the only guy that doesn't put it in. How about that?
He didn't even blink. What made it more fascinating is the fact that it wasn't a war of words. Tony was raging against nothing. This time, Tony's rage made him lose more than a hand. He had lost control. And to understand what that really meant for a guy like him, let's get into a little backstory. You see, Tony is from the old school of poker. Back then, a player's personality would often say more than anything else. The bigger the talk, bets, and ego, the more respect he had. Toby, on the other hand, represents the new generation of players who were calm, technical, and almost robotic. So when Toby refused to straddle, Tony saw it as a deliberate attempt to break the rules and spirit of the game. His rage level at that point was open frustration. Tony wasn't smiling anymore. Though his voice was still loud, you could tell he was losing the room. And that's the most striking difference between this and every other outrage we've covered so far. Because this wasn't the Tony people knew. But while he may have lost money and control here, in the next one, he managed to lose both. That night, the game had just started, but Tony G was already looking uncomfortable in his chair. He couldn't sit still for even 1 minute. As a guy who liked poker that went boom, Tony wanted big action and wild bets. But Andrew Roble, sitting across from him, was the total opposite. He was too calm and totally unbothered by the verbal war Tony threw at him. He thought long and hard before every move, and if you know Tony well, he hated that kind of play.
On the internet, you play like in 1 second. And when you come here now, you come to my game and you're wasting my time.
On the internet, people don't back 3 times a pot every hand.
On your bikes!
You come to my game and waste my time? I'll walk out, Tony shouted, throwing his hands in the air. The other players tried not to laugh. Tony called himself the donkey, meaning he played every hand, even the silly ones.
Well, I'm the donkey. I got to sit here and play every hand?
I have a maniac on my left.
What maniac? I'm just playing.
You have to...
Then he pointed at Andrew. You too, Mr. Robo. You must play every hand. No tight internet kids here folding all day.
But one thing you do have to do, you have to straddle every hand. We're not having no internet kids coming here and being tight ass. All right? And you're going to play every hand.
Andrew just smiled and said, Tony, they only called me because you were here. I came just for you.
They just called me right now at my house, and they're like, we got a game with Tony G. And I got here as fast as I could.
And
so
if you didn't, someone else would have. It was a race, and you just beat someone else.
It was a sweet answer, but even that did nothing to calm Tony down.
What is going on here? Bring someone that's going to play a hand.
A few hands later, something exciting happened. Andrew got an ace and a 9. Tony got a 5 and a 3. The dealer flipped 3 cards on the table, a 5, a 3, and a 6. That meant Tony had 2 pairs. He was winning, but he wanted to make it look like he wasn't.
That's a scary... You're a young man, that's a scary flop.
That's a scary flop for you, young man, he said, grinning like a fox. Tony bet $10,000. Andrew called. The next card came, a jack. Tony pushed all his chips in. 50,000, he shouted.
50. Tony bets 50,000.
See if you're a real man.
50,000.
Tony's playing mind games to make it look like he's trying to buy it, and he's even making it personal.
Let's see if you're a real man. At that point, Andrew froze. He didn't know what to do again. As he sat thinking of his next move, Tony was losing his mind.
Oh, I want to call the clock. I want to call the clock. Come on, internet you play like in 1 second.
Clock! Call the clock, he yelled. Come on, internet kid. You play online in 1 second. Now you take forever. The floor man came and started counting.
You're on the clock. You've got 1 minute, and then we're going to do a 10-second countdown, all right?
10 seconds left. 9, 8, 7. Andrew folded his cards.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fold.
Let's see a deuce 9. A deuce and a 9, Tony G.
Good fold.
He didn't shove, so this is a good fold.
Good fold. Made the hero lay down.
Good fold, he said proudly. But deep down, Tony was disturbed. Andrew's behavior had finally gotten to him. Even though he got the money and chips, they didn't seem to matter to him again. The real win was the psychological warfare it took to get there. At this point, Tony's rage level was a serious full steam. But if you think that was fury, the next one is total destruction. This is that special game where Tony totally lost his mind, having gone all in against Roland DeWolf. Even the dealer wasn't safe from his fury either.
Here's you, go away. We know the rules here. What is this, kindergarten? You just sit on your chair like you do and watch the game from the screen.
I'm going to be clear on these points. Under no circumstances can you abuse the players.
All right, thank you very much.
Completely clear on
Thank you, bye. Move on.
Tony had been doing what he always did, talking, joking, and trying to run the table. Roland DeWolf, another big name in poker, was sitting across from him. And beside them was Phil Hellmuth, who loved to talk just as much. That mix was always trouble, because even before this very hand began, Tony had gotten involved in a heated argument with Phil following a few comments to the tournament director. Speaking of Phil Hellmuth, I've also made a video of him blowing up. Click on the top right of the screen to watch that. Moving on. Holding pocket sevens, Tony immediately went all in with $561,000.
I'm all in.
DeWolf only had $176,000, but he made the call with an ace and an 8. Tony was still in a favorable position after the flop, but unfortunately for him, this sank to just 5% after the turn.
To you, we've talked about earlier in this series.
This dealer is just incredible. I mean, this is just unbelievable. I haven't won one hand.
As an ace was produced to give DeWolf 2 pair. At this point, Tony stormed away from the table, blaming the dealer for his inability to win a hand, and went into a tirade of explosive rage at anyone who cared to listen.
You know, like when it comes down this, like, and
Oh, he was
comes
really
down to
angry.
emotion,
Look at
you're
him.
shuddering through your head, like, boom.
You ever seen him lose it like this? No,
You
not
haven't
like
let
this
me win
bad.
one hand. Not one. Nothing.
Just running around the set.
How can I win? I can't win one hand, I'll win.
The camera followed him halfway, catching every word he said, with many full of frustration and a few too many F-bombs. This level of rage was full detonation. There was no hiding it. When he finally returned to the table, his fate was confirmed, and DeWolf managed to stay in the game. Which of these explosive moments do you think really paints Tony G as the ultimate king of poker rage? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.